Hey Mike, you got any new reports that have come into the museum?
Yes. When last we spoke, I mentioned that we had had some sightings in Quail Hollow. And when we followed up on those sightings, we actually found sleeping nests and we found some poop. And we spoke to an eyewitness who had seen one there daytime in a marsh and spent 2.5 hours there. Well, since then, we've had 2 or 3 other people come in who have come in and asked me, "Where's the last report?" I told them, and then they wanted to go out there and check it out. 2 different groups of people who came in and asked me that have since come in the museum and told me and showed me that they went out to that same location and they found footprints. Unusual naked footprints. And so I had another couple of guys come to the museum, and this is a man and his son, and he's a museum member, but he lives out of the area, and so it's a couple hours for him to drive down here, so he doesn't come all the time, but he did come and wanted to go spend some time in the Quail Hollow area because of what we had found there. And so he came in not too long ago and said, "My son and I were going through that marsh where you guys found the sleeping nest, and we spotted something unusual also, and it was like, it seemed like some sticks had been manipulated and some limbs, and they formed a perfect circle. But you had to stand in a certain spot and line the trees up in a certain way for this to all fall into place, and bam, here's this circle." He said it was very peculiar, and he wanted us to take a look and see what we thought of it. So Ralph and I went back out there again to Quail Hollow. It was about 8 in the morning. We got there, and we're looking in the marsh, and since the time we were there before on the other investigation, a lot of the leaves has fallen off the tree. They were loose and gone, and so there was nothing left. And so these guys could not find the spot where this circle formula, this strange formulation was. So we kind of gave up on it, and we were walking back on the road near the marsh, and I happened to look down. I think Ralph spotted it first, and there's a little bit of mud on what was otherwise a very dry, hard-packed road. The marshy area, clear from the wooded area of the marshes, clear over to where the road is, fairly close to the house there and the corrals, were wet. The marsh had kind of spread, and there was water now all the way outside the marsh and spread through the grass. But it was dry on the road and very hard-packed, except for this little muddy spot, and there were several tracks in the muddy spot, and we took a look at them and went, "Wow, what is that?" It's a very unusual looking track. And I don't have the photo here to show you, but when I looked at the track, I first thought raccoon, and then I realized, no, it's way too big to be a raccoon and too long. And then I thought, well, is that some kind of strange rabbit track? Is that a really huge rabbit that left that footprint there? And looked some more. And it was very clear that you could see heel impressions that were quite deep. Then where the arch would be, there was what appeared to be an arch. At least there was kind of a hollow spot. And then there was a very, very deep impression of toes. The toes had obviously gone in really with a lot of pressure and had pushed off. And so the other thing that was very peculiar about these tracks was it appeared that whatever had made the track was leaping on 2 feet at the same time. So it had come over to this mud puddle and leaped into the mud puddle on 2 feet. And then when it leapt out of the mud puddle, it landed on a hard pack and left virtually no track. So here's this kind of couple of tracks side by side, very peculiar, seemed like really long toes, and so we cast them. And here they are. And I want to show you from the side view So here's the top of the ground level, right, where we poured the plaster. And you can see how deeply these toes have gone in. And then if you look here, you can see how pronounced the heel is and how deep it was in the ground. And believe me, we stood right next to this and our footprints didn't go anywhere near as deep into the ground, because it was really hard packed except for this little muddy spot. And here is a track of a bobcat or a young cougar that this thing jumped on top of. You can see the pads. It might even be a domestic cat. It's hard to tell because it's kind of distorted. And so you say, looking at this, well, look, that's only about 9 inches long. How in the hell could you consider that a Bigfoot? Well, Bigfoot have children. And guess what? If you'll recall from our last discussion of the Quail Hollow sightings, we had a woman and her daughter who claimed they saw an adult with a juvenile pressed up against its side that's head came up about waist high. So waist high on a Sasquatch would be about up here. And I've had some nice children in the museum since we cast this. We've compared it to their feet. And yeah, sure enough, you get a person about this tall, and that's about the size of the average foot. I also know that in Bluff Creek, where the Patterson film was shot, that the people in that area for 15 or 20 years had been finding these tracks, and the tracks quite often seem to be of one or two specific individuals that they would see the footprints of over and over again. And one of them was a 17-inch track, a male. The other was a 14.5-inch track, the female, the one in the movie that Patterson shot. And in association with those two tracks, quite often they would find these 9-inch tracks. So that's why we bothered to cast them, because believe me, they did look peculiar. This one, it seems like the toes have really curled over in the process of jumping. They're kind of strange. And the time of year when we found this at 8:30 in the morning in that area, we didn't notice that there's any children running around there. But there could have been. But 100 yards from there is where the woman saw the juvenile. And one of our members has been taking walks out there now on a regular basis, and he's found some more piles of the same scat off the trail out behind the main part of the park. And like I said, some other people have come in and shown us photos of bigger tracks that they found in that same area. So there's a family of Bigfoot over in Quail Hollow right now. At least that's what our circumstantial evidence indicates. Before you close, I want to make a statement right here. And that is, when I come on here and I make these statements and show this evidence and talk about it, I want to make a little disclaimer notice right now about that. What I'm doing is telling you my opinion of what our evidence indicates based on Bigfoot studies that are similar to what most people do, that I've done since 1952. I've been studying this phenomena since it started. I've been gathering materials, been reading books, and then 8 years ago I started doing this full time. So what you're hearing is somebody who has a lot of experience studying the phenomenon giving you an opinion based on evidence that we have personally gathered and testimony, trying to suggest that this might be real. I'm not telling you that this is absolutely for sure anything of the kind. I cannot do that. And I want people who are skeptical and think that they can make fun of me because I know stuff that I couldn't possibly know, and who in the hell is an expert on Bigfoot. I'm seeing this kind of criticism pointed mostly to the TV show Finding Bigfoot. And what goes on there is Cliff and Matt and Bobo, like myself, have been studying the phenomena for a number of years. Those guys have done an extensive amount of field research, gone out in the field attempting to get close to a Bigfoot to experience it in person. They have done so. They have done so often enough and in collaboration with others and with circumstantial to back it up, to have given them the strong conviction that Bigfoot is real, and that they also have learned some things about Bigfoot by studying the thousands of eyewitness accounts. Because if you study thousands of reports of Bigfoot, you will notice that there are things across the line that agree, and that people have similar experiences quite often, and that there are certain behaviors and things that you could point to and suggest these might be factual behaviors of Bigfoot, because so many people have reported the same thing. But of course, until a Bigfoot is present that we can walk up to and touch and poke and videotape very clearly, up close and personal, with corroboration of witnesses and scientists, you can choose to pay attention to any of that or not.